On the 6th of August 1972, I climbed this mountain. It was a Sunday, and in the Western calendar, and I think also actually in the Eastern one, it was the Feast of the Transfiguration. And because there was no Catholic church for miles and miles, I went into what was there, the Greek Orthodox one, and this is what I found at the top of the mountain. And as I climbed, I thought, he took them into a high place apart. Meteora, as you can hear, means meteors. And on these meteors, these rock formations were built centuries ago monasteries, some of which are still standing and occupied, and each with a chapel inside, where one feels the passing centuries and the sound of silence, incense in the air, icons and lamps burning, and heaven physically close to earth. Time stands still. Tabor. And it's an experience which I've never forgotten, because 3 hours at the crack of dawn in a place of intense prayer rubs off on a young man. There are places where grace passes very easily. And we need, in our journey through life, to make sure that we find and safeguard these places. Many have the habit of having in their home, in their room even, a little alcove of prayer. I remember in all the years in Italy, I had one such. The Bible was there, and a little icon, which I still have, was there. And in the hours before Holy Mass, it was a place of encounter, and the words would jump out of the scriptures, and grace was in the air densely. The sound of silence perceived. Without those places and those moments, life, my friends, will pass us by, and it will not be of high quality, especially if we are contaminated by all that's out there. I mean artificialdom. Since I started in the East, I'll stay there. I remember being moved by the life of this saint, which actually I found even when still a Baptist, because our Sunday school teacher was so open-minded that he'd give us things to read and know about all that was the Christian family, way outside the parameters of our Welsh Baptist family. God bless him. So I came across through him Seraphim of Sarov. Here he is. And he prophesied the Bolshevik Revolution. He had the gift of knowledge and prophecy. A man of God who had also what in the East is known as the gift of illumination. One time, a friend of his had gone to visit him on his holy mount, and they entered into prayer mode and stayed in it all night. Towards the first rays of dawn, his friend looked at the face of Seraphim and saw that it was beginning to shine like the sun. Does that sound familiar? And even though Seraphim was actually going into high-powered ecstasy and contact with the Blessed Trinity, somehow, because of their friendship, he was still able to communicate with him. And he said to him, because he knew that he too was being caught up, "What do you feel?" His friend answered, "An immense well-being, an unutterable peace." And Seraphim, from his ecstasy, was able to reply, "This is the peace of of which the Master spoke. Remember that next time you become agitated. You are far away from that peace, and you're your own worst enemy. And so you are each time you expose yourself to unpeaceful, artificial think before damaging your contact with him, because he can't get through. My friends, I'm going to stay in the East, and I'm going to invite you to come with me to the Ukraine. This is hardly known, and there's a reason why it's hardly known. It happened under the wraps of communism, which tried its best to keep it quiet. Are you sitting comfortably? Then I shall begin. Do you know that on the 26th of April 1986, a place called Wormwood, Chernobyl, made world history. The meltdown, which wasn't quite complete, thank God, but could have been. You know what meltdown means? It gets so hot, it goes right to the core of the earth, and everything coming out of it, they contaminate by nuclear energy. But it was bad enough, and still cannot be inhabited humanly. Well, to the day, April the 26th of 1987, something happened in that same country, only about 300 miles from that very place. It was Urishif, a place which was completely unknown, only a village, but which happened to have an ex-Catholic church dedicated to the Blessed Trinity there. Now, as you may or may not know, in 1945 to 46, the Bolsheviks obliged all Western Eastern Rite Christians to become Eastern Orthodox or to disappear off the face of the earth. So this church at that point initially was declared Eastern Orthodox, therefore removed from the authority of Rome, and eventually was declassified in 1958. And when this happened, there were rumors, probably justified, that it was about to be converted into a museum of atheism. Museum of atheism. Reminds me of what happened at Oxford one time on the board of a college chapel in the Quad. It was the time when honest God was thought about. Remember honest to God, Robinson, the bishop. And this appeared on it, on the notice board. God is dead. Signed Professor or whatever, so-and-so. They're called Dons. It was the death of God era. Some years later, your man actually died. And somebody came along and on the same notice board put down, Don so-and-so is dead. Signed, God. Now, I'll tell you another one since we're at it. In Russia itself, there was a bus going through the country, and it was full of indoctrinated communists. This young man, communist to the ears, happened to notice at a certain point that there was a man sitting next to me I hadn't noticed before, and he was very venerable with a beard. He said little, while the young man held forth against the evils of Christianity. At a certain point, there was an almighty but everyone on the bus did this 3 times. And the young man was puzzled, while the old man just looked at him and said, "Young man, you see what happened there?" And he added, the reign of Satan over Russia is about to come to an end and disappear. It was their holy patron, St. Nicholas. Well, God bless Mikhail Gorbachev. We know what happened at the end of the 80s. But there's more in between. This happened at this little village church. A schoolgirl called Marina Kisin was on the way at 8 o'clock in the morning to school and noticed there was a light over the church. There seemed to be a person there. She came back in a hurry to Mam, who calmed her down and said, "Go to school. These are only excuses for not going to school." "No, come!" And she insisted and brought Mammy too. "Kneel down," said Mammy. "It's the Blessed Virgin Mary." Nothing was said, but the lady who had a child in her arms was dressed in black, and bowed respectfully to these little villagers. Word went round, because a child never keeps a secret. So, through the parents, it spread. Eventually, more light appeared, and people started to notice things. Now, I make a jump, because one of the greatest miracles in modern times, completely kept under wraps, happened shortly after, and this is going to surprise you. Because the communist authorities were alerted that there was something stirring in that village, they thought they will contain it, and so they'll make fun of it. And they made the mistake of thinking they were able to get away with it, mocking it even publicly, and even, wait for it, on the mainstream media. And so, in this public debate to make nonsense of Christianity and all these superstitions, like apparitions, they hit hard at this until, wait for it, on the screen of all watching, and we're talking about millions, the Blessed Virgin Mary appeared. Do you think that Ireland will be able to keep that one under wraps if it happened here? Anyway, eventually, this lady started to speak. And this is roughly what she had to say. What happened at Chernobyl could happen again. Russia still refuses to accept my son, and if it does not convert, there will be a third world war which will lead to the destruction of a vast part of humanity. From May the 14th to August the 15th, something truly spectacular happened, and all, of course, kept quiet by communism. All who came with at least an open mind saw her, because it was prolonged, as a little earlier in time, at Zaytun in Cairo, it happened over the dome of a church there, and can be photographed. Those who did not see her were those who came to mock her. And she had this to say: it was in context of an earlier prophecy in Ukraine that there would be a time when she, the Mother of God, would appear in 14 of her shrines in that huge country. It will culminate apparently in Kiev, which is dedicated to St. Michael the Archangel. And by the way, it has been picked up, and you can see it if you do research, in these last days, that a very large cross has appeared over the cathedral at Kiev, which is a very important place in European history, where in the 900s, at the Dnieper River, the baptism of Holy Rus took place. Well, she had this to say, interestingly, that she was pleased with those who had remained faithful to the church, and the context indicates she means there the Catholic Church, under duress. It was happening, remember, in the context of a suppressed Catholic Church of Eastern Rite. And she wanted this, that the rosary be said, and that it was the weapon that heaven had given. She added that Ukraine would be the instrument of the conversion of Russia, and that the conversion of Russia was going to be the central point. And do you know that Father Malachi Martin, who despite his questionable attitudes to some theological issues after the council, knew a lot that we don't. He's dead now since 1990, Jesuit and private secretary to the Pope for a long time. He had read the Third Secret, and by the way, there are words to that secret. That's not a question again. If you want to go into that, by the way, I've got a YouTube on it when I was preaching to the Married of Priests a few years ago. The title is Was All Disclosed at Fatima? I'll leave that with you. Anyway, question of Russia comes into it, and it is clear that she is right now linking all this to what she had already had to say at Fatima, linked of course precisely with Russia, and that we are going to see in our time history played out. Malachi Martin picks up with being very discreet, because he can't say a word, but he leaks this. Kiev is going to be crucial. We, my friends, are living apocalyptic times which our fathers have not seen or imagined. This can go either way, and the key is the Immaculate Heart of Mary. I believe that our only hope, with the actual bishops of Ukraine, the Latin ones at least, pressure, more pressure, and more pressure should be put on the Vatican to reconsecrate explicitly Russia and Ukraine, which is actually part of the same bloc, to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. And then, I am sure, the last minute, if it's done, we will see a direct intervention, but it has to be explicit in such a way that it is seen by all that this is inexplicable intervention from a Blessed Lady, because she gave us this in 1917 to avert a Third World War, and she wants Russia converted not just back to the faith in general, but explicitly to admission that the Patriarch of the West has authority over all the patriarchs and is the fulcrum point of unity. When that happens, peace will return not only to the world, but also to the church, because it was the project of the Son of God that there be one mystical body, not divided in parts. Old Nick hates unity and knows exactly how to disrupt the word of grace.